This conference will
Yes.
now be recorded.
Okay, we got nodding over there. All right, great. Uh, Welcome everybody to the Wednesday, January 26th, 2022 meeting of the Monterey Select Board here in Town Hall in the beautiful downtown Monterey. I'm Stephen Weiss, the chair.
Justin Maycook, present.
And Don Weingold is, I guess, boycotting this meeting as well. All right, so let's jump right into it, shall we? Item number one. So there's no old business. Item number one in new business, investigator summary and request for additional funds. So if everybody recalls at the last meeting, we made a request to the investigator to give us an itemized list of their charges and how they're spending our money on the investigation. They did comply late on Monday night. And there needs to be a discussion about it. The challenge is that the discussion is going to have to include using the names of individuals in the investigation. Because this was in front of the finance committee as well last night, since it was time sensitive, I took the liberty to just ask town council if this is indeed the case, and should we do this discussion in executive session. Town council's response to me was absolutely. So therefore, what I would like to do is make a motion, since this impacts both the finance committee and the select board, but it has to do with an open investigation. I'd like to make a motion to have a joint executive session under item number one on the list over there. And we start it on next Wednesday at 5 p.m. We give us enough time to get out, we would have to give out notices to everybody involved. And it keeps us in compliance with the open meeting law. And it fulfills our needs to have a frank discussion about that itemized list. Do you have a second?
I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
Okay.
I don't see why necessarily a request for more money to complete the investigation requires entering into executive session. Certainly, if we wanted to discuss the details of the investigation, then we would need to enter into executive session just to discuss charges brought against a public official or town employee in their reputation and character. But if it's just asking for more money from the finance committee to complete what's been started and move it along, it's been a really long time coming. And no one wants a project to go over budget, but it's not something that we had a lot of control over, because the idea of an independent investigation is you hire someone and then you leave them alone to their own, to be an impartial outsider, and you don't micromanage the project. So what I would like to see is that we request the necessary money to complete the investigation from the finance committee. And if they want to enter executive session to discuss charges brought against a public employee or official, then I would think that's up to them. But
So So the itemized list that they gave us, you had chance time to take a look at it, okay? The itemized list does not correspond in the named individuals who are being investigated, does not correspond to what, I believe the investigator was engaged to do. And therefore, the investigator is charging the town for, and not completing their services by calling in certain individuals. Problem is that as soon as you mention the name of those individuals, you have to be in executive session.
Yeah, so I guess,
So you can't have a discussion with the, and actually, I'd like to, one second, before let me just finish my thought here. I'd also like to invite, the investigator to be here to answer the question, about it. But this is specifically related to the items on the list, and those items on the list are names of individuals that have been spoken to, and they represent. And in an email, as part of that email that we received from the investigator, they had mentioned that they have one more discussion to have, and then they're done. And if I look at the list, and you can look at the list, I can point out at least 3 other individuals that are not on that list. Now, it may be a recording error on their part, or may not. But the problem is you cannot, as soon as you cannot mention those names of those people in an open session. It has to be an executive session. We can't have that discussion without an executive session. Now, we can have a separate executive session, the finance committee can have a separate executive session, but in order to move it along, to not make it drag on, this would be the recommendation, is to have a joint executive session, to ask these questions, and then hopefully put an end to it.
well, you're basing what you're saying off of an idea of who should or should not have been interviewed. I thought the purpose of hiring, an outsider was that we are not running the process. If we wanted to investigate the situations ourselves, then we could have done that. But the purpose, I thought, of bringing an outsider was to get someone impartial, and now we're trying to manage how they run this independent investigation, not independent anymore.
Yeah,
But that's just my point of view.
2 of the 3 individuals, I'm sorry, Mickey, 2 of the 3 individuals that I'm talking about have been named on the complaints. So there's no possible way, unless they made an error, that the people who have been named on the complaints have to be part of the investigation, because that's the whole idea of having the investigation. And if 2 out of the 3 people have been named on the complaints, and the investigator is stating to us that they only have 1 more investigation to go, and I look at the list and I see 3 people missing, then something is not correct. It's not micromanaging their investigation. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they didn't realize it. Maybe it's an error on their part. But before more money can be spent on this, we gotta make sure that every single person that's been mentioned in these various papers has been spoken to. I'm sorry, Mickey? Mickey?
So, I'm a little confused here. Is the finance committee already privy to all of the names that are on that list?
The chair of the finance committee was given a copy of that list.
I don't understand why that happened, I really don't.
Because we were asking the finance committee because the finance committee had to approve the additional monies and wouldn't do it without the additional, without the itemized list.
That bothers me. That really bothers me, because I think it should have stayed here now it just gets, all right, so there's more people in town thinking they know all the names, and you know
If it's shared with
how,
finance, yeah.
how sworn to secrecy are they or anything. That does bother me.
Well, I
And
would,
I don't know, does that have to be brought up because you need more money? Could you just say, there are more people that need to be examined and interviewed, and therefore we need the more money for this? I really just, personally, I wouldn't want to bring any more people into it, and I would have given it to them. But that's my personal opinion.
okay, that's fair.
Steve?
Who is next? Because Don has his hand up, and,
Yeah,
hi, Don.
couple of points here. Number one, who they interview is totally separate from requesting additional funding from the finance committee for reserve funds. If you want to have a discussion with them about why they're not interviewing the three people, I can understand why a discussion limited to that would be an executive session. But that's not a discussion about the use of the reserve fund. Also, you're going to find that if you are adding people to be interviewed, then the figures that they gave you for the additional money will be lower than what they actually need. So you have to straighten out first the question of should there be more interviews than they planned? And if the answer is yes, either because they forgot or because your board is insistent on it, then they're going to give you an additional increase in the amount of money that they want.
Okay, so I already done. So I hear what you're saying. However, the investigator was given, just like the other investigators, the documents, some of the documents, the complaint letters or whatever they were, and based their pricing on those papers. And again, some of those papers included folks that were not, according to this itemized list, have not yet been interviewed. And yet, they're requesting more additional funds to complete their interview, and stated that they're only going to be talking to one other person. So there's something is not right there. And yes, they are tied together because we're talking about a list of investigations, and we're being billed for those a list of interviews, and we're being billed for those interviews and the time. So unfortunately, they are linked. And I can't see a way to de-link them without having a discussion about the people that have been left off the list. And I can't have a discussion about people who have been left off the list without doing it in an executive session.
So do that in executive session, but do not discuss in executive session a request for reserve funds. If you are insistent at the end of it that they do more work than they're planning, they're going to give you an increased amount of money that they need. So until you go through the process of first meeting with them in executive session and discussing whether there should be further investigation than they plan, you got to get that done before you know how much more money you need to ask to reserve the finance committee for.
Um, Melissa is concerned that everybody in here believes that the reserve fund transfer will take place in executive session, and that's not the case. So she'd like me to put that in the record, and that's true. I understand what you're saying, Don. I'm just saying that the finance committee at least the chair of the finance committee seems to have the exact same question that I do. So I don't see what is wrong with actually having this meeting. And quite frankly, listen, if the investigator is not going to be doing the investigation, the full investigation of it, then why should the investigator get any additional funds? quite frankly. We've got taxpayer money over here. If you hire somebody and they don't want to complete the job,
No, you didn't hire them to interview specific people. You hired them to do an investigation. You agreed to a dollar amount per hour for each of their services. You didn't put any maximum on what that would be.
okay. Well, listen.
So-
Anyway, all right. Let's look what else. Yes, Sean.
I'm directly involved. I haven't heard from these people. And I know there's one other person that is directly involved. So they're gonna put a final report together that seems to be acceptable for people that are directly involved in this whole thing. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like a modern day lynching to me. They're after one person and it's not me, or it might be me. And I'm not even gonna get to speak a word to defend myself or defend anybody else, right or to wrong. I find that to be complete, utter bullshit. And
That's a bad word.
you know, it seems to go along well in this town. And it's time to get this crap back in order. And how many people have we actually interviewed? I mean, I was running some numbers before I came here, and I know of 6 people I think have been interviewed already. And I know we gave them $10,000 to work with. That's $1,600 a person. At like 4.5, 4 3/4 hours a person. And I talked to a few of them, and I know you people didn't spend 4.5 hours with them. So what's going on here? I'd like to hear I'd like an explanation for that.
Steve, you mentioned that they're only looking to discuss issues with one more person. And is your name Sean?
Maybe.
I don't see it. Sean mentioned he might be one of the people, but he knows about another, and there might be some others. So if their request right now is to tidy things up with the one more person, and there are more than one more person, then they're gonna come back again to ask for yet more funds. And this seems like a never-ending process here. It's not so much the funds as it seems like this whole process is being mismanaged. I'm a neophyte to this. I'm not part of this investigation. They haven't called me. They're not gonna ask me any questions. For their sake.
Right. So,
But let me.
Oh.
How much are they charging? Where are these hours?
so we have, again, we were given an itemized list, how many, they bill out, you've got 2 people, 2 attorneys, they bill out at different rates.
Mhm.
In some cases, I'm not sure why, but in some cases, you had both attorneys were doing questioning, which runs the numbers up
Significantly, right?
significantly. But we, in an effort not to micromanage the investigator, we're not, no one's saying anything to them. I figured that they would actually get it done within the parameters, since they do this a lot. And since they had all the complaint letters in front of them and had the names, which did include the person who spoke up today.
Right. But you don't know if that's not the last person. But the point that I'm making is, why do they need 2 attorneys at
So
attorney
that would
rates?
also be another good, look, these things would be good questions. I think a frank discussion between the investigator, the select board and the finance committee, would be beneficial, to get some answers for the taxpayers. And doing it in one combined session will also help a lot with the recollection, because, everybody's got their own different perspective on this. And I think it's the most efficient way of coming to a positive conclusion, and not overspending and not spending tremendously more money on this.
Keep in mind, they'll be charging you while they're talking to you.
I understand that. I mean, that's why, yeah. That's
I didn't hear
exactly,
you.
that's
What did
exactly
you
the
say?
case.
What did you say?
They'll be charging me while they're, to have that discussion about their charges.
Oh, yeah, that's very good.
That's, you should have been an attorney. So yes, however, I can see no other way of doing it without adding more time to it, and making it even more complicated than it already is.
Well, you could,
So-
Steve, simply send them an email asking them to explain in an email why they haven't interviewed those people. You don't have to have a meeting for that.
All right. But I can't, then I get the email, all right? How do I get that email? It has the names of people that haven't been interviewed in there. How do I explain that, the answer to that email to either members of the select board or the finance committee?
One thing at a time. Call them on the phone. Tell them that the board's noticed these people haven't been interviewed. Would they please send you an explanation as to why?
So,
Do we know how many people have been interviewed? Can you say that?
I mean, there's a list, but I don't have the list in front of me, and I really don't want to get into the numbers. Melissa, I don't want to get into the numbers.
Okay.
I would appreciate it. I have a vote on my motion. This is the only way to do it, Justin. I can't think of another way of doing it. Yes, I could go to her office, Karen Green's office, and have a discussion with her, but then I can't come back and tell anybody because I cannot mention their names. Or we could have an executive session then when I tell you what she said to me. But why not have her at a meeting
It sounds logical.
so that we all hear the same thing coming from the same person?
Steve,
Yes, I'm sorry, Susan.
that's okay. It occurs to me, based on what John said, he has a point. If you were to communicate in writing, email, with the investigators, asking them to detail in writing to you why they haven't interviewed everyone named in the complaint, and whether they plan to do so, and what the additional interview and process will involve, and they answer you in writing, you don't have to detail the names. You could say to the finance committee, for reasons mentioned in the letter, X number of people were not yet interviewed and will be. And this overage includes those additional interviews or follow-up interviews. Because it could be they talked to someone, but then now they have more questions for somebody. I don't know. And the writing of the recommendation, and therefore it will be involve X number of hours, and we will finally get the recommendations and the investigation will be complete. You don't have to name those people to the finance committee.
Okay, so I hear you, Susan. However, as you are aware, there are individuals out there that are looking for a slip up. Any possibility that we're going to, by accident, that it's going to get divulged, or somebody's going to put it on a thread to somebody else, and in this atmosphere where there are people that are just looking to pounce, I can't think of a way that's going to do it that's going to where there's not a risk that the email with names of it are going to get out. And when the finance committee, what if the finance committee says to me, well, I don't, you say 3 people. Who are those 3 people? What am I going to tell them? Well, I'm not going to tell you who it is. They have the perfect right to say, well, then we're not going to go ahead and authorize the reserve fund transfer. Then what do we do? So I'm trying to keep them in the loop. of this, and the only way to do that is to do it with a joint executive session. Since they are the ones, they're holding the purse strings to ultimately finish the payout, to get this investigation concluded. So I can't think of a cleaner way to do this and a more efficient way to do this. I understand what Don is saying 100%, and I understand what you're saying as well. And I, but again, when I hear somebody say to me, hey, I'm part of the investigation, and yet I haven't been called, and I know that there are other people out there, and then the investigator says to me, well, I need more money to finish this, so I can interview one more person. That there's got to have this discussion, and I don't feel that it should be just between me and the investigator. Have our email back and forth. So I like the investigator there. I think they should be called to the carpet and figure out what it is, what we need to do to get this thing completed. We need to get this thing completed, and I don't want to add more steps to it if possible. This way, we can have a joint session on Wednesday, and then hopefully they can finish it. We can put this thing to a conclusion by February and be done with it. I understand what everybody else is saying, but this is the easiest way of doing it without the risk of messing up and then getting some kind of, what was that word? Bullshit complaint filed. That's gonna be the word of the day. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for the expletive. But that's exactly what it is. So this is the only way to do it where we're not gonna get a gotcha. How about that? We'll use the word gotcha instead. Justin, I thought about this a lot.
Yeah, no, I think I disagree with your assessment of the situation in that you're saying these people should have been interviewed and they're not. But the purpose of bringing someone in from outside was that they would figure out, because everyone on this call and everyone in this room has their own picture of what happened and why it happened, and maybe some people's larger than others. The idea was you bring someone in from the outside so that you get an impartial view of what happened and where to go from here. And you don't tell them how to go about it and how to do it, and we never did, really. But if this is the only way to move forward.
How can somebody be directly involved in it and not be interviewed? Explain that one to me.
There was
Maybe they
so,
eliminated you, you're no longer involved.
And so the report comes out with my name in it, bashing me and.
I don't think, from my understanding, when we interviewed all of the different investigators, my understanding was that anyone who was a respondent, who was going to be subject to a significant complaint would be interviewed. So I'm not of the understanding, and I could be wrong, maybe this is just something we gotta clarify with the investigator, but I'm of the understanding that no one would be, found to be in violation of a law or of a employee manual violation without being interviewed. I'm of that understanding, but that would be something to check. When we interviewed all of them, they all said we would absolutely interview anyone who we were going to, find in violation of a policy or a law. If I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, a lot of people were accused of a lot of things and may or may not, but
But that's what you need to investigate, Justin, don't you think?
Yeah, who's
So
right or
I
who's
have a
wrong?
real concern.
Yeah.
So let's say that you grant, I don't even know how much money is being discussed, and that's unimportant, the amount of money is really unimportant. But what if they come back again and say, you know what, we reconsidered, we heard your meeting here on Wednesday, the 26th of January, and we need now to interview 2 or 3 or 4, 7, or whatever more people, and we need for another $10,000. Then what? Are we gonna be hostage to this kind of situation? This actually bothers me. This actually bothers me. By the way, as a professional who reports to an ethics committee, Their scope is an absolute violation of every ethics committee in the world.
What is?
They cannot do an investigation, give an analysis, and then make recommendations. May not. You can only do 2 of the 3. And that's why most of the large accounting firms have split with internally so that they can do the audit process separately from the consulting to keep it absolutely apart. It's a Supreme Court decision. What they're offering you right now is absolutely spurious. But I don't know who the investigator is and so on and so forth. I don't know why, as the chair just pointed out, that they might actually have more than one attorney doing the interview. Why? This is our money. They have a fiduciary responsibility to us to marshal our assets. Why do you need 2 attorneys to interview a person here? I find that to be very troublesome. I am certified, and I'd be in jail for this kind of a process. And I'm troubled by this.
Okay, Melissa has her hand up.
I just want to expand on what Sean said. When you guys hired her, you stated that you were looking to find out the credibility of the complainant and the validity of the claim. So if Sean has some serious complaints against him, how could you not interview him to see if the credibility of the complainant is good and if the validity of the claims is good?
But you don't know that he's not the last one.
I don't, but
then there are other people.
I know the other person that should also be interviewed and they have not been, and
understand.
claims against that person are pretty serious.
The bottom line is we gotta get to the bottom of this. Let's get to the bottom of this all together instead of piecemeal.
Yeah, so my one concern is that we shouldn't do anything in executive session that's not directly about a charge against an employee's reputation or character. You know, anything like that has gotta be done in open session. I mean, anything that's outside of that has gotta be done in open session, whether it's, the money that they're asking for, et cetera. That has to be an open meeting. We can't do that in executive session.
So council, you can call council.
Yeah.
Council said that if we use their name, it must be an executive session. Under item number 1.
So maybe this is really 2 different discussions, one with the investigator about the scope of the investigation and one about the money, because the money, it has to be transparent, it has to be in an open meeting, right?
But they are intertwined, because if you're talking about an investigation, and the investigation is based on the interviews, again, at least 3 individuals have not been named. And the investigator is saying, hey, by the way, I want more money, and I'm only doing one of the investigations, then that actually combines the 2. It combines the money, the investigation, the people and the people involved. It does. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this whole thing, and that's the reason why the town council said, do not even, don't even go there. I don't even like having, the number of things read, because we get perilously close to the line, and again, you've got some people that, that's their current hobby. They want to see us make a mistake, for sure. So the only way to do this without making a mistake.
But, I mean, you can make a mistake in the other direction where you do something in private that should be open to the public. That's also, I know it's a tricky situation, but we have to do public things in public.
I understand that. However, on advice of counsel, that this particular event needs to be an executive session. I really would advise you to contact counsel if you don't believe me, and ask them.
John Levin has his hand up.
Yeah. Hey. Hi, John.
Steve and Justin, John Levin here. It says Paula, but it's John Levin.
Yeah.
I think that you're both right, and I think that the solution to this problem, the solution to the problem is, or the correct way in which this should be handled, is the select board should meet in executive session with the investigator, ask whatever questions they have, whatever concerns they have, address whatever issues may be relative to the engagement and the cost of the engagement. And then the select board needs to make a decision as to whether or not the scope of the engagement needs to be increased, whether or not um, the uh, there needs to be additional funds available for the engagement. And then once the select board makes that decision, then they should make a recommendation to the finance board that additional money needs to be um, allocated for the investigation. And the finance board is going to have to, finance committee is going to have to rely on the recommendation of the select board as to whether or not additional funds need to be allocated for this. You can't mix the apples and the oranges. You have executive session requirements relative to the investigation, and you have public meeting requirements relative to the use of public funds. But there's a limit to what you can do to satisfy in the session. So I would recommend that you independently review the status of the investigation and decide as a board what additional work or money needs to be done up front. And then you have an open meeting with the finance committee and say, we are recommending that we spend X dollars more. You can give a general reason as to why you feel it's necessary. And if the finance committee doesn't agree with you, then you're going to have to figure out some kind of alternative. Thank you.
I can live with that. I
And
think it's gonna increase the timeline.
names should not be disclosed in open session under any circumstance.
Oh, no, right, oh, no, absolutely. So again, it will extend the timeline, to the end of the investigation, but I've got, I've got no problem with that, I can live with that.
So I'd amend your motion
So I will amend
for
my
the
motion.
select board to meet in executive session with the investigator to discuss the scope and finishing of the investigation. And then thereafter make then involve the finance committee, if that's the route that we choose to go.
Okay, so I make that motion.
And just to be clear, that one would be, those parties would be invited because their names.
Yes,
might
it
be
is still executive session, those parties would have to get notified, all the parties involved would have to get notified. We'll still do it at 5 PM on Wednesday.
Well, that was-
Based on the availability of the investigator, obviously,
I was also curious if we could meet at noon next Wednesday, that's slightly different but related. At noon, like 12 PM, but it's fine if not.
do to have the executive session?
I was
Oh,
unrelated to
oh.
any of this,
Have the
I
whole
was wondering if
select
we could meet at
board, have the whole select board meeting at noon?
but if that's not, I can make it at 6 if need be.
I get no problem with that. Melissa, is this room available at noon? There's a quilting class and a ritual human sacrifice class.
Yep, we're good.
What? Oh.
Yep.
Noon's fine with me.
Yeah.
So the motion would be that the Monterey Select Board will meet in executive session at noon on Wednesday. And then following that executive session, we'll go back into open session, to conclude town business.
Second,
Vote yes?
yes,
Okay. Town administrator items, senior transportation intermunicipal agreement renewal is, what has changed in this agreement since the last The last one.
I sent you guys the marked up copy.
Now, I don't understand, is this the marked up copy? Because I see lines,
I have the original here, if you guys are okay with it. The Council on Aging has already read it and they're fine with it.
well, we actually voted to agree to this, change.
You need to. This is the renewal of the agreement and they made changes in the renewal.
Great, okay, so I move that we accept it as amended, and accept the intermunicipal agreement between town of Great Barrington and the town of Monterey.
Second,
I vote yes.
yes.
Chapter 90 project closeout.
Just need your permission. I'll need your signature at the end of the meeting to close out the request that we had open for the pavement management software. Jim has decided not to buy the additional piece of equipment, the GPS system that we had originally asked for, so we're all done, the project's complete. Just need you to approve it and sign it.
I move that we approve it and sign it.
Second,
I vote yes.
yes.
Request to, oh, okay, so this is my request to contact council to discuss please for ARPA. So I am keenly interested in the use of funds for the, what does ARPA stand for? The
Rescue
American,
Plan Act.
what?
American Rescue Plan Act.
Oh, that's right, you have. Here's my thoughts on ARPA. From when it was first announced last year, ARPA was designed to provide funds to offset negative impacts that people have experienced during COVID. If it was up to me, if I could do this, I would take some or all that money and basically write everybody in town a check, because we've all been negatively impacted by COVID. However, that is not an option. My thoughts, though, are since we can't distribute some of those ARPA monies back to the townspeople who've been impacted, that we do the next best thing and provide and use some of those funds to provide them with enhanced services and possibly offsets to certain budget items. I do know that there are some departments that have additional requirements, funding requirements because of COVID. So it would make sense to see if any of those ARPA funds could, instead of adding more to the budget and having the taxpayers ultimately pay that additional amount, it would, I think it would be prudent to at least investigate if you can use some of the ARPA funds to offset some of the increased requests in this budget season. I'm using the fire company just as an example. I'm just riffing here, so I know I've got the sheet here. But if, for example, if the fire company is looking for an extra $10,000, but 5,000 of it can be given back to the fire company is through ARPA, and therefore the request is only $5,000. The impact to the taxpayer is a savings of $5,000 because we're using ARPA funds. I don't know if any of this is feasible. However, in order to even flesh any of this stuff out, I need to have a discussion with the council on the parameters of it, and I just needed to asking for permission to go ahead and just ask them. I will keep the conversation short. It will be in an email, so that I'll give a list of some ideas and have them say, can I do this? Can I not do it? Can I do it? Can I not do it? So it's basically they're just going to answer the email And if, I mean, we can, there are other towns out there, I've seen reports where they're using ARPA money, they're thinking a little outside the box. They're using ARPA money to augment some of the services that the town provides. And again, if we can do that, I'm not saying use all the money or even a big chunk of it. I'd like to see if that would be a possibility.
Yes, I would think that would be a good idea. If you could please, when you email them, ask about a couple things. Because one is, could the funds be used to create a public health nurse position? Or fund a public health nurse position? Could they be used to wire and or pay for broadband at, a nonprofit like Hope Farm? And the third one completely is escaping my mind.
Okay.
That one
We're
too.
gonna have to go with those two.
Okay. Sure, absolutely.
Did you know we have a public health position that's paid for through a grant for the next 15 years, I believe?
Yeah, the shared one, right?
Right, it's a public health collaborative.
Yeah, but we only get, how many hours a week do we get?
I believe it's as necessary.
Yeah. I was wondering, well, actually, someone else proposed the idea to me of how we have a council on aging outreach worker. But I'm just wondering if it would be feasible, if this money could be used to, have a nurse that might be able to, we have a lot of elderly people in town who could use help from a nurse and potentially, and it's just one use I would consider for the funds.
Okay. And again, this is exploration. We don't have to, I think we have until 2024 to actually spend the money. There's no rush.
Yeah, it sounds like you're gonna get it in writing, which would be good, especially if we have to years later look back on it.
Yeah, no,
And get
absolutely.
the written opinion.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's that.
Okay.
Holiday pay for unbenefited employees.
So I brought this before the board before and did some more research and this is where I'm at the moment, and I just wanted to seek input from the board. Because this will still require additional research, but I wanna know if this is the general direction that the board would like to go. The policy reads, when an unbenefited employee's regularly scheduled work hours fall on a day that the town has designated a holiday and the employee cannot work because the employee's department is closed due to the holiday, and the employee's hours will not be rescheduled to a different day, the employee shall be compensated for those regularly scheduled work hours. It's my understanding that, if we tell an employee it's Christmas Day, you can't work, and we don't reschedule those hours, then I think that we should compensate them for that, even if they are not a full-time employee.
Okay, so, other than the transfer station, who would be impacted by this?
So it depends exactly how you proceed with defining the specifics of the policy. But I think one of the most obvious other groups of people other than transfer station attendants would be library staff, because they're in a similar situation. Library director works many of his own hours, as you probably see when you drive by at night. But the other staff do not have, they either sit behind the circulation desk or they don't work. And then there would also be the question of would this apply to part-time employees who work in town hall?
Okay, so, first of all, Justin, let's see if we can avoid too much of a discussion about the library and the community center. I don't want.
Yeah,
Be any
so
kind of
obviously
problem.
I would recuse myself on any discussions of the library director wages. I think this policy would probably be most important for people like the transfer station staff, or the library staff who aren't the director, where they cannot come to work because it is a holiday and there's no way for them to make up those lost wages.
Is there anybody else? The reason why I'm asking this question is the following. I was thinking about the transfer station, okay, and this has come up, this request has come up here and there, and I can understand how, sometimes it doesn't work out. And that in itself, that in itself could probably be solved by an agreement with the transfer station personnel. I mean, if you want to implement this, the transfer station, if that's the only impact, but you're saying that the library also has a similar impact.
The two library staff who are not the director, when it is a holiday, they do not work and there's no option to make up those hours. And I also don't know whether this would apply to a temporary highway employee. I don't know. It would depend where you take it, but if, he's working Monday to Friday for 4 months and, it's Martin Luther King Day and we say don't come into work, the town tells him not to come into work and he doesn't get paid and he doesn't have the option to make up those. Look, I don't know who it would apply to, but the premise of it, I think, is pretty fair, which is that if, you work for the town and you have a regular schedule, and the details would need to be fleshed out, but if you work for the town, you have a regular schedule, and then we say don't come in because it's a holiday, then we pay you for that, because you have no opportunity to make up those hours. But, look,
Yeah.
I don't get vacation time, sick time, or let alone whatever, I don't get any time, but I'm just saying, I think it's fair and consistent,
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I never got any of those things either, so vacations were non-existent. Sick time, thank God I was healthy. But as far as the library staff, I know that this past November, there's one staff member, it's just one staff member working each day, except the ones that the director works. We're not counting him. But she's scheduled for Thursdays, and we had Thanksgiving and Veterans Day both. So that month, she was really impacted by losing 2 days of pay. And that's a big hit on somebody who's, not got a, and besides which, they're not making all that much money. You go in to drive into McDonald's and you see they're hiring starting at $15 an hour, and you're paying somebody who's got some education and everything else, and they're getting under 20. Why work here?
So, using 2022 as a baseline, can we figure out what the impact of this now would be financially?
Well, so I posed a lot of questions to Justin about this. I think, first and foremost, you keep saying the regular schedule. I think you have some issues in a few departments of people that are supposed to be working regular schedules and they're not, and the board is not addressing that. And I think you have to get your house in order first before you go making any policies. And I'm sorry that affects other departments, but I think if you're going to make a policy that's going to affect everyone, you have to have everybody on the same page first. So you have to fix the scheduling issues that you have here. Then I think because I don't think it's fair, me personally, to single out certain employees. You either make it all employees under 20 hours, and then you need to figure out how you have certain departments like the fire department. I mean, they work on holidays and they only get a stipend. So are you saying that their time is not worth, that they're dedicating their holidays, not spending Christmas when they go to a fire or whatever, that they shouldn't have some kind of reward as well? And then I think if you're gonna look at holidays, you should look at paid time off as a whole. I mean, what if somebody gets sick? What if, I think there's a lot more that needs to be figured out before it's a nice idea, and I don't disagree with it, but I think there are too many questions. And there's gonna be too many employees, the way that it's currently written, that are gonna feel slighted. And such, those are my initial thoughts. I really think that a lot more time needs to be put into this and thought, and like I said, getting your house in order.
Are the two of you working together, Justin, or are you working with Melissa?
We've had a lot of back and forth about this.
Yes,
Um,
it would be much easier if we could do it in person, because email is tough, it takes away from other things.
Would you want to schedule some time to sit down with Melissa? I mean, if it could be really fleshed out, this is the policy, how it's gonna apply to everybody, this is what's gonna cost it, this is what's gonna, this is what the impact of it will be to the town financially. If all that can be fleshed out, we could do it, and this has been brought up here and there before, so, but we always seem to hit this kind of morass where we lose momentum.
So look, I've done quite a bit of research, and Melissa helped by sending along what some other towns did. I looked at the town of Sandwich, they have a similar policy. One difficulty I run up against is I think our employee manual needs, and our employee policies need quite a bit of work, and I really think that we should budget a significant amount of money for the upcoming budget season, put it in the warrant to redo that, because I was trying to, work within the employee manual.
Right.
To write this into the employee manual instead of having a standalone policy. And it was not very easy to do that. Because actually, when I tried to research it, typically it's not written as, if you're a part-time employee, you get holiday pay. Usually it's written as pretty much anyone who's regularly scheduled to work, if your day falls on a holiday, you get paid, as long as you work your work day before that and your work day after that. That's how it's usually written, to my understanding. It doesn't really single out part-time employees, because the idea is you're a company, or you're a town, or you're an employer, and you tell your guy or your gal, you can't come into work, and that's not really, they take a hit from the paycheck. So I think you're right, everyone's right, it needs more work, but I will continue to try and flesh it out within the general premise that if the town tells you, you get unlucky, and because Christmas and New Year's always fall on the same day, you get missed back-to-back paydays, then I'll continue to work on it.
So you're looking for feedback from the board, from my chair, I'm saying that I'm open to it. If it could work out where it doesn't cause a problem with every department, and it's not a major financial hit to the town, I'm certainly open to it. So what I would suggest, if you want to get all the way there, is to get together with Melissa. I mean, she's been here long enough, so she knows the ins and outs of it, and see if you could craft something that will address all those issues. But I'm certainly open to it. I'm not against it.
Yeah, I actually, frankly, I see it as part of a larger review of the employee manual and just personnel policies in general. So
I think that's probably one of the recommendations that's gonna come out of, may come out of the investigation, if the investigation ever ends, is that we need to have some concrete, we need to take another look at that employee manual. And that should be on a future agenda, is to review that. And if you start making, obviously you're making notes when you're going through the employee manual. I think you might.
I think the problem is HR, or human resources, seems to be a very professional and always adapting field with a lot of laws and lawsuits behind it these days. And so I don't know the right way to write the employee manual to keep us out of lawsuits, and also to provide a good working atmosphere. So I really think it might be time to budget some serious money for a professional to do that.
Well, so, by the way, that was one of the things that I was actually gonna ask about the ARPA money. if this 5 towns can get their act together for a human resources person, can we use some of the ARPA money for,
It's not the 5 towns getting the act together, it's the applicants.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I'm sorry, 5 towns, you're right, I'm talking, the applicants can get their act together, the 5 towns are ready to go. That's right, you're right, Melissa. Since it seems to be a delay, and since obviously COVID has brought out, has exposed the need for a human resources person, I would think that ARPA money anyway, to be used. But, all right, yes, I would also consider getting some money together for a professional to actually go through that employee manual. Anybody in the audience? Yes.
I'm not understanding why, once you get an HR person, that person shouldn't do as part of their job. What do we need more money spent on? That's what an HR person should be doing.
That person, I believe in the agreement was 6 hours a week for Monterey.
Yes, but in all the interviews, they understand that they're going to be updating all of our policies and such, and that it's likely going to be pretty uniform across all the towns with minor changes that reflect, Monterey's uniqueness. So that's always been the plan, is that they're going to update.
Justin, I'm not denying that we need to relook the employee handbook and the rules and regulations, and these are tough times, and the world's getting tougher, not easier. I understand that. But if we're already gonna hire someone as part of a group to do this, and it seems like the HR person should be the one responsible for leading that.
Yes, Hillel, except the fact is that the joint person has fallen through in all likelihood. And it could be up to another year before the cycle comes around, the other towns are on board, they interview another set of people, and they make a hire. And at this point, it's very clear that the flaws in our HR are serious enough that a year is a long time to wait to go forward.
So we are not waiting a year, Susan. We are waiting until budget season is over, so March or April, and then we're going to be interviewing again.
Assuming you get candidates. The advantage of our going forward and looking for a firm to hire for a number of hours to fix the problem and then reduce the number of hours to a manageable ongoing thing would be that you could well go through another 2 or 3 cycles as the 3 you've already done without finding viable candidates.
We could, but you're not going to get the funds until July 1st, so.
I don't know, I don't think we can spend too much money on HR, frankly. But, so that's where we're at. I'll continue to work on it and maybe come back with a proposal, and maybe it will have to wait until there's a, more serious.
Okay, and I'll review the document, you sent the document right before the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, I think you might have it.
I have it probably in my email, so I'll review that as well, and come up with my ideas. Okay. Next one is, consider formation of a transfer station committee. Justin, that's yours.
Yeah, so last week, when we did budget talks, one of the topics that came up, that garnered the most discussion was the transfer station, how we're gonna run, how it's going to be run going forward. And, I've already, agreed to a meeting with Melissa and Jim next Tuesday, to discuss with them. But, my thought was that it may make sense to make a citizen committee of people to make recommendations, because there's changing circumstances as far as personnel. And that brought up other questions of how we run the transfer station in general, with charging for sticker prices and, with potentially going other routes of how we pay for our waste. I have a draft mission that I could read if you wanna add any input. But like I said, I'll be meeting with Jim and Melissa next week, to discuss.
Sure, if you'd like to read your mission, I'll listen to it. I can give you my opinion, but
So I would envision a transfer station committee made up of 5 people appointed on a yearly basis. The mission of the transfer station committee is to assess and review the current operations of the transfer station, determine short and long-term goals for the transfer station, and to present recommendations to the select board. The mandate of the transfer station committee is as follows. Review and assess current operations of the transfer station to determine short and long-term goals. Examine the operational and financial implications of various staffing models and recommend a staffing plan. Consider the current pay structure and options going forward, including pay per bag. Consider creating an enterprise fund and then present a plan and recommendations to the select board. I think, if we just wanted to keep going down the same route, which I think is a model that worked really well, maybe in part just because of the people who were actually staffing the transfer station, and in part because it was designed well for the cars, because the whole system was designed well. But if we're gonna have questions about can one person run it, and should we charge more for stickers, and we're gonna have these larger questions about how to change it moving forward, I think that's a lot, for the select board to handle, and it might be worth, like how we have a Lake Garfield working group, to, if interested parties wanted to have input on that.
so, we have some immediate decisions that we're gonna have to make for the transportation. They're going to preempt, by the time you get a committee together and they have meetings and they do the analysis, it'll be 8 months down the road or 6 months down the road. We have some immediate needs and we have some immediate decisions to be made. Generally, for the transfer station, we make a lot of decisions based on the actual finances and what is going on at the transfer station, what can we afford, what's working, what is not working. This transportation is still relatively new. It's only been in operation, 5 years? 6 years at most. So, there was a lot of, we tried something, didn't work, and we also got lucky with the staffing of the people there, because originally, I believe there was gonna be one person, and then we had 2, and then we found out that 2 worked really well. So I guess my concern is when it comes to finances, which includes the amount of dump you charge for a dump sticker. There are many different schools of thought when it comes to waste management and what you charge for. There's certainly open to a discussion about it. I know that I've had disagreements with people on the select board. I have a different philosophy than other people have when it comes to sticker fees and what have you. But I'm not sure what a committee would really, I don't know, I'm not sure what a committee would really bring to the table, and certainly it wouldn't bring to the table, with the immediacy that we actually need. Committees are great, but we are right now sitting in a town hall that was designed by committee. And I'm telling you that this place should be shut down because it is really poorly designed. So sometimes committees work really well, sometimes they don't do what you think they're gonna do. I'd like to see well, first of all, we have to get past the problem that we're having, the challenges that we have right now, and we can have a discussion about that. As a matter of fact, I'd like to continue that on the agenda to talk about the transportation, because I've actually have some concrete ideas about it. But when it comes to things like enterprise fund, enterprise fund is terrific, but in order to do an enterprise fund, you have to bring a certain amount of revenue in to cover costs. And the only way to determine that is you got to figure out how much are the costs,
yeah,
to determine how much revenue you're going to bring in. And and this analysis is I know has been done every single year. Because it would be great to have a transfer station that is completely off the back of the taxpayers, brings in and pays for itself on stickers. The only problem, the only thing that happens is that currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, and she'll definitely correct me if I'm wrong, the sticker fee would have to be like $250 in order to cover the costs.
Not quite that high, but 175 maybe.
See, I knew she was gonna correct me on that. So, all right, but still 175, and I'm not interested, I don't think you're interested, in having 175, or at least not now, to have that, you know, to jump the sticker price to 175. The theory is terrific. But you need to get, but we can talk about how we're going to, you know, how we're gonna get there. And that's, I mean, that's easy. I mean,
Well-
yeah.
I have my own personal opinions about how the transfer station should be funded. You know, I don't think that we should go the route of funding it just through fees. I'm comfortable with some being funded by the general tax base. But that's just my opinion, and I think part of the idea of forming a committee is that, you know, it's not, you know, we're only two people, and there may be people who are interested in the transfer station and have more time to dedicate to it, and are, you know, use it and love it and have their ideas about how it should work, who aren't us. And then they can really have their, you know, help decide how it gets run. Because also another thing is I just feel like, yeah, the select board, you know, can do some things and then we're not, we don't always do other things very well. And maybe a committee could help us get to a better solution for everybody in town, because it would have more perspectives. You know, there may be one person on it, you know, I guess, that's all.
Okay, it's an interesting idea. Let me, may I think about it? Yes, Mickey?
I'm just gonna say that, going across the table, you want it all funded by stickers, he wants it funded partly.
No, I didn't say that.
I think that it's a service that should be provided by the taxpayer. I pay for schools. I don't have any children in school anymore, and there are people in this town who never had any kids in school, and they still pay their taxes. Biggest part of their taxes go to that. And I think that having a place that you can take your garbage is a service that should be provided, and that's just my opinion.
Mhm.
You know, a sticker should be a sticker, and it just says that, yeah, I'm a taxpayer, I can dump my garbage. And I'm a single person in my household, I don't make a whole lot of garbage. But there are others that have huge families, and they bring a lot, have to come 3 times a week. I just think it's the usual fair way that taxes work, even if they're unfair. That's it.
Are you saying taxes are unfair?
Yeah, there's a lot of
No, I'm-
taxes. that are
I'm only-
unfair.
You know, we don't agree very often,
Yeah,
but
and
I agree with
by the way-
you 100%.
And just to clarify, I'm not saying that it should be paid only with stickers. But again, there's this constant suggestion about an enterprise fund, and the whole idea is, if you want an enterprise fund, you've got to bring in, you know, the same amount of revenue that you're going to expend. So I was just addressing that. I think there's a middle ground to it. All right, let me, this is interesting, and this is really good proposal, again, you know, you're gonna have, everybody has different ideas when it comes to waste management. It's really quite interesting. I never knew more about it until I got onto the select board. And it is one of the services that will never get cheaper. Because it just won't. It's hard to get our garbage. Yes, sir.
You know, picking up on what Mickey just said, the cost to the taxpayer is not the budget at the transfer station, because part of the budget is already picked up. The cost of the town would be the foregone fees, the 60, 70 whatever dollars by the number of houses. How many people, Melissa, do you have any idea how many stickers are sold a year?
About 500 to 600.
Okay, so we'll take 600 at $70 a piece. That would be the amount of money that has to be made up in the budget, or an increase in tax, to make Vicky's idea fair. We don't pay for fire service, we don't pay for police service, we don't pay for plowing, or we don't pay for more plowing or less plowing, or more sand or less sand. This is the one, this is the one thing that actually isn't fair. Everybody who does dump pays the same rate, even though they don't dump the same amount. Now, you're one person, I'm two, I have no idea where, we go 3 times a week, I have no idea where it comes from. And my wife lives in Boston, okay? So
Sometimes I don't have to go every other week.
there is this equilibrium, okay? That, you know, all of a sudden there's one service that we have to, you know, we don't pay for library service. We don't pay for, maybe you're gonna start sending us bills for fire calls.
I
It
understand.
just seems like this is
I
archaic,
understand that.
okay, and.
What towns are facing is that, first of all, there's a certain part of the population that doesn't use transportation.
That's okay, I don't use the schools anymore.
I know, I understand that, I'm just
Vicky,
saying.
do you have children that did use the schools?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you're ahead of the game.
See?
At least you got some benefit out of all the
It's been
taxes.
so long.
I understand, but we never had kids, so,
Yeah, see?
But anyway, it's a good conversation. Listen, we got the whole transportation committee right here.
no, he's no longer on.
All right, so we'll keep that alive for the discussion. Review an email regarding correspondence to be sent or signed. So I see that, Justin, you put an email.
Yeah, John Silver sent an email to the select board on January 14th, subject notice regarding Monterey citizen petitions. Should I read it?
We can make it available to the public, I mean, if that's okay with you. The crux of it is, I mean, all right.
I think. Can I read it?
Sure.
So that everyone knows what we're talking about?
Sure, absolutely.
Dear Select Board, on October 21st, 2021, 4 citizen petitions were received by the Monterey Town Clerk. The petition forms contain the following wording pursuant to General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10. Subject or subjects requested for action at the meeting, open parentheses, to be filled in by petitioners. If space is insufficient, attach additional page of description to each petition form before signatures are gathered. Close parentheses. In this subject box on the first pages, the 4 petitions contain the following wording. For bylaw authorizing recall elections to be submitted at special town meeting presently scheduled for November 6, 2021. Proposed bylaws attached. However, only the first petition had the wording of the proposed bylaw attached to the petition. The 3 other petitions were distributed separately without the wording of the proposed bylaw attached. Please see attached PDF of petitions, file name, citizens-petition.pdf. Citizens who signed the 3 petitions without the wording of the bylaw attached did not have the wording to review before signing, because the subject they were petitioning for consideration at special town meeting included only the wording on the first page of the petition for bylaw authorizing recall elections to be submitted at special town meeting presently scheduled for November 6, 2021. Without the attachment, they did not know what proposed bylaw wording they were petitioning for. This alone should legally invalidate the 3 petitions signed without the attachment. Furthermore, the wording submitted on the warrant for consideration at special town meeting as Article 6 citizen petition included the wording that was attached to only 1 petition. Please see attached PDF of warrant, file name 2021 NOVSTM.pdf. In other words, the wording of the warrant article matched the wording of only the 1 citizen petition submitted to the town clerk that included this attachment. This 1 petition, therefore, was the only legal and valid petition submitted to the select board for inclusion on the town warrant as worded in Article 6. The other 3 petitions did not match the wording on the warrant. Since the law requires 100 registered voters or 10% of registered voters, whichever is lesser, for the petition to be legally inserted into the warrant, the number of signatures on the 1 petition with the wording of the proposed bylaw attached had an insufficient number of signatures to meet the legal requirement. To put it another way, the only wording that legally met the requirement of the number of signatures was the matching wording on the top of the first page of all 4 petitions. the bylaw authorizing recall elections to be submitted at special town meeting presently scheduled for November 6, 2021. However, this was not the wording inserted into the warrant. I recommend you forward this to town council for an opinion. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Sincerely, John Silver.
So you received this email, what day?
January 14th, the whole select board received it.
January 14th of 2022, right?
Yeah.
The citizens petitions that are talked about were certified when?
November 12th, 6th.
November 6th, maybe?
6th, is that the date?
No,
Before
that's
around
it.
that.
Before the 6th.
End of October, early November.
Okay, they were certified by the town clerk, let's say, beginning of November. Okay? They were also given to town council at the same time, beginning of November. They were sent over to the moderator. The moderator reviewed it and decided to go ahead with it, presented it to the townspeople. And townspeople voted on it at a meeting that was attended by legal counsel. So you have certification by the town clerk, you have a review by town council, you have a review by the moderator, then you have another review by the town council, and then you have a vote by the townspeople. Those are the processes that transpired for this particular petition. So now we have an email written on January 14th by someone in town, not an attorney, who's not the moderator, who's not the clerk, basically saying, hey, listen, guys, I think this is all wrong. I think the moderator made a mistake. I think the clerk made a mistake. I think town council made a mistake. I think town council made a mistake again. I think all the people that voted for it or voted, they all made a mistake. The only person that seems to have this correct insight, this magnificent insight, seems to be the person who wrote this email, John Silbert. If that's the case, great. The answer to Mr. Silbert, if I was going to answer him, I would say this has already been looked at by town council. It's already been, I understand it's been looked at by both the Senate and the House council in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the answer would be, thank you for your interest in this event. I would suggest that you focus on events that are currently happening.
So I think the strong reason to send it to town council for review is that it's out there and can be sent to, the senator and the representative, as we saw before. The select board didn't send we sent a letter to Heinz and Pignatelli asking for a special act, and we were responded to that it was under investigation, and then actually the town council's look at it, the town council's opinion on it, we sent along to Heinz and Pignatelli, and they were, then they changed course. So this is out there, now, and what I'm saying is, it's probably gonna be sent to them,
Right.
it's gonna be sent to them regardless.
Don't you think he sent it to everybody, including the New York Times and the Boston Globe? As posters, he'll post it in the post office box. I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, it's.
I'm insulted, I didn't get a copy.
Exactly, I would expect there to be leaflets underneath our windshield wipers when we leave here right now. And by the way, because somebody says this happened, does not actually make it so.
Actually,
I mean, he could write you a thing that says, by the way, I just looked it up. I found out that Melissa No was never really hired back 15 years ago. They were actually.
Why do you pick me as an
Now you tell me.
Well, because you disagree with
You're
me.
easily picked on.
I'm sorry, usually I pick on Mickey, sorry. But, you know, I mean, like, just because somebody sits down at their table and and types up whatever comes into their head and sends you a couple of PDFs, I mean, it sounds very official, and but just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's so. And again, to say something like this, you're saying, moderator, you know the
I
moderator?
don't think,
Moderator,
actually,
you don't know
I
what you're
have to
doing.
disagree with you on
You
that.
don't
I
know
don't-
what you're doing.
I have to disagree with you on that one. I don't think the moderator reviewed the citizen petitions. I could be mistaken on that. But
Well, you should
But
ask.
my point being, Steve, not to go through what happened in the past or didn't happen, but to say that if this is going to, you know, be circulated to the senators, would not we want an opinion from our town lawyer on this?
So you had an opinion from a town lawyer twice.
He did not address this specific thing.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
He was given the petitions, yes, he was actually given the petitions, and actually did make comments on it. He was given the petitions prior to the town vote, Justin. He just was.
You know, you
But
might
because,
point out, Steve, you might also point out that it seems to me rather moot what was on those original petitions because the text was changed on the floor. So what people voted on was not in fact what was originally on the petitions, which is a normal thing. That's not unusual. So whatever was on the petitions, people were approving the idea that we would discuss it on the floor, and we did.
Yeah, and so council, you know, will probably say that. Wouldn't it be good to have a response to this from council?
look,
You know, instead of it floating
can I
around?
write this on a
You know.
whiteboard? Mickey, you wanna write on a whiteboard? This was already vetted by council. This petition was already vetted by council. Here, let me say a third time for clarity. This petition was already vetted by council. You put all my responses in the minutes over here. It was already vetted by council. The fact that somebody is unhappy somebody's trying to squelch the recall petition. Why? Are they afraid they're gonna be recalled? How gonna be recalled? Is that the reason why it is? Do they have too much
The
time
thing is,
on their
it doesn't
hands?
matter what, you know, all that matters is what Heinz and Pignon tell it. You know, like we saw, did the select board send something, you know, whatever it was, a month ago to Smitty and Pignon? No, they said they were investigating a concern that they had, but actually the opinion from our town council negated those concerns.
Right.
So this is gonna be out there, so don't you want
I would
town
not,
council to
I would
speak
not
to this
spend, I
concern?
would not spend a second to answer a legal analysis by somebody who obviously has a chip on their shoulder about the recall petition, and wants to show the entire town of Monterey how brilliant he is, and at the same time wants to say that the clerk made a mistake, the moderator made a mistake, and the town council made a mistake twice. Not only that, the state representatives council looked at it, and the state senate council looked at it. So all these people have looked at it, and all these people have said it's okay. But you get one John Silver email that says, "Hey, you know what? Instead of breakfast, I decided I'm going to do an analysis of the recall petition that happened in November, and I found a loophole that may invalidate the whole thing. You guys better spend some more money to ask the town council the third time whether or not we should invalidate all of it so that my position on the finance committee is saved, and that my pal John Weingold's position on the select board is saved, and that we can all continue to frolic along in the woods over here." I mean, that's what this is. This is just, if somebody else writes you a thing and says, "Hey, listen, you know, I just want to let you know that, you know," I don't know what. I can't even think of a proper analogy. Just because somebody writes and then says, "I think everything here that you're doing is illegal, you should contact town council." I'm not going to contact town council because obviously they're talking out of a different part of their anatomy. And that's exactly what's happening here. You have somebody who's just saying, "Hey, you know what? I found this. Nobody else found it. I was the only one to find it. So I'm a super genius." and I want you to go ahead and take my words and ask for town council. The first thing town council's gonna say is, how do you know this happened?
Actually, I came prepared to discuss that if you don't mind, but,
No, I defer to you.
if you don't mind, I'm gonna read this because, I spent, I've been pretty upset about this, so have a little patience, please. I read John Silver's email and I'm flabbergasted. I would like to set the record straight. After Don Coburn's second attempt to have the recall bylaw petition passed in our annual town meeting, when it failed, Sean Tryon was determined to get it done. When my wife, Janet, and I were told that Sean began the recall bylaw petition, we met him to sign our names. I know that he had the text attached to the signature sheet because I recall asking him which of Don's two versions were being sent. He did not know, so he gave it to me to read. So I read it, and it was attached to his signature sheet. When Sean was notified that he had not garnered the requisite number of signatures, he thought he needed 10, but he needed 10% of the voting public. I offered to help get more signatures. Sean gave me a copy of the recall bylaw petition and the signature sheet, and I had more copies of them made in the event others wanted to join the effort. When I solicited signatures, I also had petitions attached to the signature sheet. Ellen Coburn and Ken Bassler were quick to join. Ellen clearly recalls that one or two actually asked to read the petition. Ken gathered signatures at the coffee club, and he too recalls that a number of people took the time to read the petition. There were only 4 people who solicited signatures: Sean Tryon, Ellen Coburn, Ken Bassler, and me. All 4 of us have unshakable memories of having the recall bylaw petition attached to the signature sheet as people signed. So John Silver got it wrong. What is clear to me is that this select board should not waste any more time or resources chasing John's spurious claim. What is even clearer is that John owes the board, and to those who he claimed did not process the recall bylaw petition correctly, an apology.
I agree.
And you know, to answer your question, you can't stop people from constantly raising these issues and raising these issues. Nothing's gonna stop that, Justin. You know, some of us have been around long enough to know that you just can't stop this spewing. But you can't just respond to every one of these spurious claims. And this is spurious. I know for a fact that all 4 of us walked around not only with a signature sheet, blank signature sheets, but the petition as well.
I see, Ellen Coburn has her hand up.
Yes, I
Hi,
just,
Ellen.
hi, I just confirm that it's true and John is wrong. And it's not the first time that John Silver has made charges that were wrong. Okay? We all make mistakes, but just because someone sends a letter, I totally agree with you, Steve. Just because someone sends a letter, and especially when that letter is incorrect, it should not be sent on. It should not be given the sort of the rubber stamp or the rubber stamp of approval by saying this might be important. Let's send this on. It's not true, and it shouldn't go on.
Okay, are we the, so, yeah, so I make a motion to press delete on that email.
I think that'd be in contradiction with the public record statute, so that shouldn't delete it, but let's just keep it in our inbox.
Okay, we'll keep it in the inbox, there we go. So we agreed, we're gonna keep it in the inbox, and then perhaps it will be a power failure. Great, so any questions or comments from the public? I see there's some people on the line over here. Is that John on the board? Is that John Weigold? That would be interesting. While we're here, let's have a discussion about why you're actually just monitoring this meeting without actually participating. No? It's another John? Okay.
Could be Janet.
Could be.
says Jen.
There are a lot of Johns here. Well, if there's no other comments, by the way, if I did swear, I do apologize to the public.
Just don't put on a sign in front of your house.
I will not put it on a sign in front of my house. You know, I've yet to see that sign. I don't know why.
You're going too fast.
Blue Hill Road,
You're going right too
I know.
fast.
You
Gotta go slow and look downhill.
I gotta look down. Oh, all right.
Hard.
But do it quickly before the leaves come out and let us see it.
Oh, okay, all right. With no questions or comments from the public, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I vote yes. Yeah. Yes. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
One thing for you to sign, Justin.
That's still on?
You were born when you were right there.
This is the chapter 90 closed session.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't get this thing shut.
Alright, so, you wanna come by sometime?
Mhm.
Tomorrow morning? 7
That
o'clock in the morning?
is the